37 death row inmates were granted clemency by President Biden. Their sentences were reduced to life in prison. Some of the crimes that were committed are beyond horrific. Welcome to this episode of Human Wreckage. Thank you for joining me. Let's get into it. Shannon 53. With his brother Joe, he abducted banker Dan Short from his home in Benton County, Arkansas, and took him to Short's bank across the Missouri border, where they stole $70,000. The brothers then killed Short and dumped him in a lake. Agofsky is on death row for stomping fellow prisoner Luther Plant to death inside a federal penitentiary in Texas in 2004. His brother died in prison in 2013. Billy Allen, 46, and Norris Holder, 48. Holder was awarded $500 a month after losing part of his leg in a train accident, which he always withdrew from the Lindell Bank and Trust branch in the Forest Park area of St. Louis. In March 1997, he took Allen with him to get the money, and they returned 4 days later armed with 2 assault rifles, a shotgun, and 200 rounds of ammunition. They fired 16 shots in the robbery, killing security guard Richard Heflin. They got the idea for the raid from watching the movies Heat and set it off. Aquilia Barnett, 51. He turned up at the Charlotte, North Carolina, home of his former girlfriend Robin Williams in April 1996 and threw in a firebomb which failed to kill her. The next month he hijacked a car, killing the driver, leaving his body in a ditch before driving to Williams's mother's home where he found his ex. She ran, he caught her and dragged her back to the house by her hair and then killed her with 2 shots. Brandon Basham, 42, and Chadrick Folks, 46. The 2 small-time criminals escaped from the Hopkins County Detention Center in Kentucky in November 2002, using a makeshift rope from bedware. They then set off on a multi-state trip, stealing cars along the way, eventually ending up in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, where they followed Alice Donovan's blue BMW into a Walmart parking lot. They kidnapped Donovan, 44, and after Folks raped her, Basham took her into the woods where he shot her. Her body has never been found. Anthony Battle, 61. Battle was serving a life sentence in federal prison in Atlanta for the 1987 murder of his wife when he bludgeoned correctional officer D'Antonio Washington to death with a hammer because he was tired of being bossed around. He confessed to the December 1994 murder of Washington with an insanity defense, but was sentenced to death. Meyer Brown, 53. Brown went to the post office in Fleming, Georgia in November 2002 to get his family's mail. After going home, he got the idea to return, this time with a knife. He jumped over the counter, tripped, and fell into postmistress Sally Gaglia, cutting her. He then decided he had to kill her as she would recognize him, and he stabbed her 10 times, leaving her face down on the post office floor. The robbery netted Brown $175 in money orders. Carlos Carroll, 56. Carroll was a drug smuggler, bringing narcotics over the border into Texas. He was sentenced to 30 years in 2001, his 3rd conviction. In prison, he became a leader of the violent prison gang, the Texas Syndicate. In December 2003, he strangled his cellmate Roberto Sandoval to death in prison in Jonesville, Virginia. He told investigators he had killed Sandoval because he had called him a motherfucker. Wesley Kuntz, 43, and Charles Hall, 52. Both men were in the mental health ward at the federal prison in Springfield, Missouri, when they attacked fellow prisoner Victor Castro, binding him and standing on his neck till he suffocated. Kuntz, who was serving a life sentence for kidnapping and carjacking, was caught on camera making a throat-slashing sign to another inmate as he left Castro's cell. Hall was behind bars for making threats against a federal judge and prosecutor. Brandon Council, 38. Council shot bank tellers Donna Major, 59, and Katie Skeen, 36. Dead during an armed bank robbery in Conway, South Carolina, in August 2017. His actions were premeditated. They were deliberate and they were intentional, Prosecutor Everett McMillan said. The jury took just 32 minutes to find him guilty. Christopher Kramer, 41, and Ricky Fackrell, 39. The 2 Utah men, members of the Soldiers of the Aryan Culture, were in prison in Beaumont, Texas, when, after months of planning, they stabbed fellow white supremacist Leo Johns to death in June 2014. Kramer was originally sentenced for bank robbery and was convicted several times for attacking other prisoners. Fackrell was serving time for armed robbery. Len Davis, 59. Davis was known as RoboCop during his time in the New Orleans Police Department. He was suspended 6 times in a 5-year period before receiving the Medal of Merit. A woman called Kim Groves filed a complaint saying she had seen him beat up a man who he thought had been involved in the shooting of a cop in October 1994. Davis was tipped off and ordered her murder. A local drug dealer shot and killed Groves less than a day after she made the complaint. Joseph Ebron, 44. Ebron, a convicted murderer, killed fellow inmate Keith Barnes less than a day after Barnes had arrived at federal prison in Beaumont, Texas in May 2005. Barnes had told correctional officers he feared he was in danger as he had given evidence against co-defendants in murder trials in Washington, D.C., but he was placed in the prison's general population anyway. Ebron held Barnes down while another prisoner stabbed him to death. Edward Fields, 56. The former prison guard hid in camouflage in Oklahoma's Ouachita National Forest and shot campers Charles and Shirley Chick with a high-powered scoped rifle in July 2003. He shot Charles in the face, and then as Shirley ran off, he shot her in the foot before catching her and dispatching her with a bullet to the back of the head. He later returned to the campsite and stole a few items from their van. Marvin Gabrion, 71. Teenager Rachel Timmerman had accused Gabrion of raping her. 2 days before he was due to stand trial in June 1997, Timmerman's body was found in a lake, weighed down with cinder blocks. Her 11-month-old daughter Shannon has never been found. He is also suspected of murdering 4 other witnesses in the case, but their bodies remain missing. Edgar Garcia, 44, and Mark Snar, 48. The two were prisoners in the federal lockup in Beaumont, Texas in November 2007 when they both managed to slip out of their handcuffs. They stabbed prison officer Dwight Baloney 23 times with homemade shanks and then turned on another guard, Josh McQueen, demanding his keys. Snar ripped the keys from McQueen's belt, and they went to the cell of Gabriel Rohn, who they repeatedly stabbed, killing him. Thomas Hager, 50. Hager was a major crack cocaine dealer in Washington, D.C., who went into hiding at his girlfriend's apartment after shooting and injuring 2 rivals in November 1993. Barbara White, who had had a child with a member of the rival gang, visited Hager's girlfriend, and he decided he had to kill her as she might give away his location. He and 3 others went to White's apartment where they stabbed her more than 80 times. Richard Jackson, 54. College graduate Karen Stiles went missing on Halloween 1994 when she was hiking in the Pisgah National Forest in North Carolina. 3 weeks later, her naked body was discovered by a hunter, duct taped to a tree. Near her were a pornographic magazine and a single rifle casing. She had been shot in the head and suffered 10 stun gun wounds, 9 of them to her pubic region. Jackson was caught when officers traced the sale of the duct tape back to a local Kmart. Georges Katamovas, 57, and Yuri Mikkel, 58. The pair, who had moved to the States from the former Soviet Union, went on a 4-month spree of kidnappings beginning in late 2001. They targeted wealthy Soviet immigrants and received more than $1 million in ransom money from relatives of their 5 victims, but they killed them anyway and dumped their bodies in New Melones Lake near Yellowstone National Park. Darrell Lawrence, 48. Lawrence robbed 4 banks in central Ohio between January 2004 and January 2005. During the last, he shot and killed Columbus police officer Brian Hurst, who fired back, injuring Lawrence. He was arrested within days and immediately confessed to all 4 robberies. Ronald Mikos, 75. Mikos, a podiatrist known as the Medicare murderer, killed retired nurse Joyce Brannon, who was planning to testify against him in a fraud trial. Mikos, the oldest man on death row, would forge patients' signatures on documents saying he had performed surgeries on them. When he learned Brannon's evidence could put him away in January 2002, Mikos took her to a church basement in Chicago and shot her 6 times at close range. James Rohn, 58, and Richard Tipton, 53. They, along with Corey Johnson, who was executed in HDE dying days of the first Trump administration, were part of the Newtown Gang in Richmond, Virginia. They were convicted in February 1993 of several capital murders arising from their drug trafficking. In early 1992 alone, they were responsible for 10 murders. In one case, Douglas Tolley, an underling who had mishandled a drug deal, was stabbed 84 times. Julius Robinson, 47. Known as Scarface, Robinson was a wholesale drug dealer based in Fort Worth, Texas, distributing narcotics to a 5-state area. He killed one man who he mistakenly thought was behind a hijacking that cost him $30,000, and then the brother-in-law of a man who had persuaded him to pay $17,000 for a block of wood covered in sheetrock that he thought were drugs. David Runyon, 53. The sole Asian on death row, Runyon was hired by Katerina Voss and her lover to kill her Navy ensign husband Corey in April 27, shortly after he returned from deployment in Korea. Katerina sent Corey to an ATM to get money from an account she had opened for him. He didn't realize she had put just $5 in it. When he kept getting insufficient funds notices, he hung around, giving Runyon time to find him and shoot him to death. Katerina then refused to pay Runyon a single cent. She is serving life in prison. Ricardo Sanchez, 40, and Daniel Troya, 40. They were part of a drug cartel in Florida that got into a dispute with fellow kingpin Jose Escobedo. They followed Escobedo along the Florida Turnpike in October 2006 and opened fire, killing him execution style. Escobedo's wife Jessica tried to shield their 2 sons, Louis Julian, 4, and Louis Damien, 3, but all 3 were killed. "I have no confidence Mr. Troya wouldn't do this again," the judge said as he sentenced them. Thomas Sanders, 66. Sanders shot and killed his girlfriend Sulan Roberts in the remote Arizona desert after a Labor Day outing to the Grand Canyon in 2010. He then kidnapped Roberts' 12-year-old daughter Lexis, driving her cross-country to Catahoula Parish, Louisiana, where he shot the girl 4 times and cut her throat. Caboni Savage, 49. The aptly named Savage has 12 convictions for murder and was on death row for ordering the October 24 firebombing of a Philadelphia house where a federal witness was living. The resulting blaze killed 6 people. Savage was a high-level drug dealer, delivering tons of cocaine throughout eastern Pennsylvania. He allegedly killed one man after they got involved in a minor fender bender, but he was acquitted because the only witness was also murdered, supposedly by him. Rejon Taylor, 39. Taylor abducted Atlanta restaurateur Guy Luck from his driveway in August 2003, shoved him in the back of his van, and drove him to Chattanooga, Tennessee, where he shot him on a remote road. Taylor had broken into Luck's Buckhead home several times. On the last occasion, he found papers showing that Luck had decided to press charges against the then 19-year-old for stealing his credit cards. Jorge Torres, 35. Torres joined the Marines in order to evade suspicion for the May 2005 murder of 2 young girls, Crystal Tobias, 9, and Laura Hobbs, 8, in Utah. He had sexually assaulted them and removed their eyeballs. His death sentence was imposed for a separate murder, the strangulation of Navy Petty Officer Amanda Snell in Arlington County, Virginia. He also abducted a woman in Northern Virginia, raped her, and left her for dead in the snow. Alejandro Umana, 39. A member of the notorious Miss 13 gang, Umana shot and killed brothers Ruben and Manuel Salinas at Los Charachitas restaurant in Greensboro, North Carolina, in December 27 after an argument about what music should play on the jukebox. Umana, an undocumented immigrant from El Salvador, is also suspected of at least 4 murders in Los Angeles. That wraps up this episode. I am sure you are shaking your head as much as I am. If you like what I do, please like and subscribe. Leave a comment about how you feel about these individuals getting reduced sentences. Justice. Till next time, take care of yourselves.